They sold her like livestock under a sky that refused to rain. Lyra Vance, the woman who once made wolves weep with her dancing, who brought harvests when the land was barren, who held a pack together with nothing but movement and music, stood in chains while her own alpha counted silver. Ronan Cade didn't meet her eyes. He didn't have to. The message was clear. Power that couldn't be controlled had to be destroyed. But here's what no one understood yet. Not Ronan, not the silent pack that watched her dragged away, not even the rogue king who bought her like a broken tool. Lyra Vance wasn't the kind of woman who stayed broken. This is a story about a gift too dangerous to keep and too powerful to kill. About a woman who walked into hell and made it bloom. About the moment when the discarded become unforgettable. If you want to see how a caged dancer becomes a queen, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see where this story travels. The morning Lyra was sold, the sky hung low and amber, thick with heat, that made breathing feel like swallowing cloth. No clouds, no wind, just that suffocating yellow light pressing down on everything like the world itself was holding its breath. She stood in the center of the territory square, with iron around her wrists. The chains weren't necessary. Everyone knew that. Lyra had never been a fighter, never needed to be. Her strength had always been something else. Something quieter, stranger, harder to name. But Ronan wanted the visual. He wanted the pack to see her bound. Wanted them to understand that even she, especially she, could be reduced to this. Property. The pack surrounded her in a loose, uneasy circle. Some kept their heads down. Others stared with the blank, sheep-like obedience of people who'd stopped asking questions a long time ago. A few looked sad. One or two looked hungry, but none of them moved. Not one. Lyra didn't expect them to. She'd learned that lesson months ago, back when Ronan's suspicion had first turned into something colder, back when her dancing, her gift, had started to feel less like celebration and more like evidence. Evidence that she had power he didn't understand. Evidence that the pack loved her in a way they'd never love him. Ronan Cade stood to her left, arms crossed, jaw tight. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, square-faced, the kind of alpha who looked like he'd been carved out of stone and left unfinished. Handsome in a brutal sort of way. Strong, competent, and absolutely terrified. Not of enemies, not of rogues or rival packs, of her. "Let's get this over with," Ronan muttered. Not to her, but to the man standing across from them. The buyer. Kyle Draven was everything Ronan wasn't. Lean where Ronan was thick, still where Ronan was restless. His face was sharp, weathered, like something that had been left out in the rain too long and had forgotten how to rust. Dark hair pulled back, eyes the color of smoke. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched. He'd been watching her since he arrived, not the way men usually watched her, not with want or threat or the greasy appraisal of someone calculating her use. This was different, clinical, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't been given all the pieces to. "She dances," Ronan said flatly, as if that explained everything. As if it explained anything. Kale's gaze didn't shift. "I heard. And when she dances, things happen. The land responds. People calm down. Crops grow. Rain comes." Ronan's voice was tight, like he hated every word. "It's not normal." "No," Kale agreed. "It's not." Lyra kept her face blank. She'd learned that too. How to disappear inside herself while her body stayed visible. How to let them talk about her without ever talking to her. It was easier that way. Safer. Ronan shifted his weight. "I'm not saying she's cursed. I'm just saying she's unpredictable. And unpredictable is dangerous." "Dangerous," Kyle repeated, like he was tasting the word. "I can't have my pack distracted. Can't have them looking to her instead of me." Ronan's voice dropped, harder now. "She doesn't fight, doesn't challenge, but she doesn't have to. They follow her anyway. Not because she asks, because she, I don't know, pulls them. And you're afraid they'll pull away from you." It wasn't a question. Ronan's jaw tightened. "I'm being smart. A good alpha cuts out weakness before it spreads." Kyle glanced at Lyra then, just for a second, and something flickered in his expression. Not pity, not sympathy, something colder. Something that looked almost like recognition. "She's not weak," Kyle said quietly. Then she's something worse. The silence stretched. Finally, Kyle reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He tossed it to Ronan, who caught it with both hands. The clink of silver was soft but unmistakable. Ronan didn't count it, didn't need to. The weight was enough. "She's yours," he said. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small, quiet break, like a bone that had been fractured for months, finally giving way. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg. She just stood there, wrists aching under the iron, and let herself be bought. Kyle stepped forward. He moved carefully, like someone used to being around things that might bolt. When he reached her, he paused, eyes meeting hers for the first time. "Can you walk?" he asked. His voice was low, rough, not unkind. Lyra nodded. "Good." He turned to Ronan. "The chains stay off." Ronan frowned. "She's unpredictable. She's a person," Kale cut in, voice flat. "Not livestock. Take them off." For a moment, Ronan looked like he might argue, but then he glanced at the pouch in his hand, at the pack watching from the edges, and he jerked his chin at one of his enforcers. The man stepped forward, key in hand, and unlocked the cuffs. Lyra's wrists were raw underneath, red and bruised. She rubbed them absently, feeling the sting, the blood rushing back into her hands. Kyle didn't touch her, didn't grab her arm or shove her forward. He just gestured toward the road that led out of the territory. "Let's go." Lyra looked back once, at the square, at the pack, at the place she'd called home for most of her life. No one met her eyes. No one said goodbye. She turned and walked. The Deadlands earned their name. It took 2 days to reach them, and with every mile the world grew quieter. The trees thinned. The grass turned gray. The sky stayed that same sick amber, like the sun was dying but refused to set. Kale didn't talk much. He walked ahead, steady and unbothered, like a man who'd made this journey 100 times and found nothing worth remarking on. Lyra followed a few paces behind, her legs aching, her mind somewhere far away. She thought about dancing, not the performance kind, the kind Ronan had tolerated because it made the pack happy, made them productive. No. She thought about the other kind, the kind she used to do alone, in the woods, when no one was watching, the kind that made the wind pick up and the ground hum and the air taste like rain, the kind that scared her. She hadn't danced like that in months, not since Ronan had started watching her differently, started asking questions she didn't know how to answer. Why does the harvest grow when you dance? Why do the wolves calm when you move? What are you? She didn't know. She'd never known. The gift, if that's what it was, had always just been. Like breathing. Like hunger. She didn't control it, didn't summon it. It just happened. And now it was gone. Or buried. She wasn't sure which. "Almost there," Kyle said, breaking the silence. Lyra looked up. Ahead the land dipped into a shallow valley. And there, sprawled across the basin like a wound that wouldn't close, was the settlement. It wasn't much. A cluster of rough buildings, half-finished walls, tents patched with canvas and hope. Smoke rose from a few scattered fires. People moved between the structures, slow and hunched, like they were carrying invisible weight. Lyra had heard stories about the Deadlands, about the madness that spread through wolves here, about the rogue king who ruled with cruelty and chaos. But looking at it now, she didn't see chaos. She saw exhaustion. "Home sweet home," Kyle muttered. They descended into the valley. The people stared. Not hostile, not curious, just blank. Like they were looking at her but not really seeing her. Like she was already a ghost. Kale led her through the settlement without stopping. Past the fires, past the half-built walls, past a group of children sitting in the dirt, too tired to play. One of them, a girl, maybe 6 or 7, looked up as Lyra passed. Their eyes met. The girl's face was pale, hollow. But for just a second, something flickered there. Something almost like recognition. Then Kyle turned a corner, and the girl was gone. They stopped in front of a low stone building near the center of the settlement. It looked older than the others, sturdier. The door was thick wood, iron reinforced. Kyle pushed it open. Inside was sparse. A table, a few chairs, A narrow cot against one wall. A fireplace, cold and full of ash. "This is yours," Kael said. Lyra stepped inside slowly. The air smelled like dust and old smoke. "I'm not a prisoner?" she asked. Her voice felt strange. She hadn't used it in days. Kael leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No." "Then what am I?" He considered that for a long moment. "A guest," he said finally. "For now." "And later?" "That depends on you." Lyra turned to face him. "What do you want from me?" Kael's expression didn't change. "I want to know if the stories are true." "What stories?" "That you can heal land, calm madness, make things grow." He paused. "That you're dangerous." Lyra's throat tightened. "I'm not dangerous." "Ronan thought you were." "Ronan thought a lot of things." Kael studied her, not unkindly, just carefully. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." He turned to leave. "Wait," Lyra said. He paused. "Why did you buy me?" Kael glanced back over his shoulder. "Because I needed someone who didn't belong to anyone else," he said. "And you looked like you'd finally figured that out." Then he left. Lyra didn't sleep. She sat on the cot, staring at the cold fireplace, and tried to remember the last time she'd felt safe. It had been years, maybe longer. Outside, the settlement was quiet. No laughter, no music, just the low murmur of voices and the scrape of boots on stone. She closed her eyes and tried to feel the land beneath her. Nothing. The gift was still buried, still silent, and part of her was glad. Because if she never danced again, if she never let that power loose, then no one could take it from her. No one could fear it. No one could sell her for it. She could just disappear, be no one, want nothing, hurt no one. It sounded peaceful. It sounded like surrender. Lyra pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, and for the first time in months, she let herself cry. Not loud, not desperate, just quiet, just tired, just done. Morning came gray and cold. Lyra woke to the sound of voices outside, low, tense, urgent. She pushed herself up from the cot, her body stiff and aching, and moved to the door. When she opened it, she found Kyle standing a few feet away, talking to a woman with short-cropped hair and a scar running down her left cheek. The woman was arguing. "Can't keep ignoring it, Kyle. 3 more last night. One of them tried to claw his own eyes out." Kael's jaw tightened. "I know." "Then do something." "I'm trying." "You're stalling." The woman's voice was sharp, frustrated. "We need a healer, a real one, not whatever this is." She gestured toward Lyra without looking at her. Lyra stayed in the doorway, silent. Kael noticed her then. His expression didn't soften, but something shifted, something almost like regret. "Go check on them," he told the woman. "I'll be there soon." The woman shot Lyra one last unreadable look, then turned and walked away. Kael sighed, rubbed his face. "What's happening?" Lyra asked quietly. "Madness," Kael said. "It spreads through wolves here, has for years. No one knows why. No one knows how to stop it." He paused. "People lose themselves, forget who they are, attack each other, attack themselves." Lyra felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And you think I can help?" "I think you're the only thing I haven't tried yet. I don't know how." "Neither do I." Kael met her eyes. "But I bought you because I'm desperate. And desperate people do stupid things." Lyra almost smiled. Almost. "What do you want me to do?" Kael hesitated. Then he gestured toward the edge of the settlement. "Come with me," he said. "Just see, Otat." The Madness Ward was a converted barn at the far edge of the settlement, away from the main buildings. The smell hit Lyra before they even reached the door. Sweat, blood, something sour and wrong. Inside, the light was dim. A dozen people lay on cots or sat against the walls, restrained with leather straps or watched by exhausted guards. Some rocked back and forth. Others stared at nothing. One man was whispering to himself, voice hoarse and frantic, words that didn't make sense. Lyra's chest tightened. She'd seen madness before, in the old pack, back when territory disputes turned bloody. But this was different. This was deeper, older, like the land itself was sick. Kale stopped just inside the door. We keep them here. Try to keep them calm. Keep them from hurting themselves or others. But it doesn't get better. It only gets worse. Lyra moved forward slowly, drawn by something she didn't understand. She stopped near one of the cots, a young woman, maybe 20, with tangled hair and wild eyes. The woman looked up at her, and for just a second, just a heartbeat, her expression cleared. The wildness faded. The panic eased. She blinked. Focused. "Who?" she whispered. Lyra's breath caught. Then the moment passed. The woman's eyes clouded again, and she turned away, muttering to herself. But Lyra had felt it, that pull, that hum, the gift, stirring. She backed away, heart pounding. Kale was watching her. "What just happened?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know." But she did. She knew exactly what had happened. The land had recognized her, and it was asking for help. Lyra didn't go back to the ward. Not that day. Not the next. She told herself it was because she needed time. Because the gift, whatever it was, had been buried for so long that digging it up felt dangerous, like opening a door she'd spent months learning to keep locked. But that was only half true. The other half was simpler, uglier. She was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if she tried and failed. Afraid of what would happen if she tried and succeeded. Afraid that if she let that power loose again, someone would take it from her. Use it. Twist it into something she didn't recognize. So she stayed in her small stone room and tried to become invisible. It didn't work. The settlement noticed her anyway. Not in the way Ronan's pack had. No reverence. No whispered speculation. Here, the looks were colder, suspicious. The kind of attention that made her skin crawl. She'd catch people staring when she walked to the communal well for water. Hear voices drop when she passed. Once, a man spat on the ground near her feet and muttered something she didn't catch but understood perfectly. Outsider. Useless. Bought. Kale didn't push her, didn't demand she go back to the ward or explain what had happened. He just watched. The way he always watched. Like he was waiting for something to break. Lyra wasn't sure if he was waiting for her to break or for the settlement to. Either way, she didn't plan on giving him the satisfaction. Okay. On the third morning, she woke to shouting. Not panicked, not angry, just loud, urgent. She pulled on her boots and stepped outside. The settlement was already moving. People hurried toward the eastern edge, where a crowd had gathered near the crop fields, if you could call them that. The land was mostly dirt and stubborn weeds, a few sickly plants struggling to grow in soil that looked like ash. Lyra followed at a distance, staying on the edges. When she got close enough to see, her stomach dropped. The fields were worse than before. Whole sections had withered overnight. The plants blackened and twisted like they'd been burned from the inside out. The air smelled wrong, sour, metallic, like blood left too long in the sun. Kale stood in the center of the mess, arms crossed, jaw tight. The woman with the scar, Lyra had learned her name was Maris, was crouched nearby, digging her fingers into the soil and cursing under her breath. "It's spreading," Maris said, standing and wiping her hands on her pants, faster than last time. "How long?" Kyle asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. Maris glanced at the gathered crowd, then lowered her voice. "We won't make it through winter if this keeps up." Kyle didn't respond. He just stared at the dead earth like he could will it back to life through sheer stubbornness. Someone in the crowd spoke up, a wiry man with a patchy beard and a mean look in his eyes. "Maybe if you spent less time collecting strays and more time fixing what's broken, we wouldn't be in this mess." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Kyle turned slowly. "You got a better idea, Joran?" Joran shrugged. "I'm just saying, you brought her here." He jerked his chin toward Lyra without looking at her. "Said she could help, so where's the help?" Lyra felt every eye turned toward her. Her pulse quickened, her hands clenched at her sides. Kyle's expression didn't change. "She's not a tool you wind up and point at a problem." "Then what good is she?" "Enough," Maris cut in, her voice sharp. "You want to question leadership, Joran? Do it later. Right now we've got dying crops and winter coming. Focus." Joran scowled but didn't push further. The crowd started to disperse, grumbling and tense. Lyra stayed where she was, rooted to the spot. Kale walked over. He didn't look angry, didn't look disappointed, just tired. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. It was a lie, but it was easier than the truth. Kale glanced back at the fields. "They're scared. People say stupid things when they're scared." "They're not wrong," Lyra said. "I haven't helped." "You haven't had a chance to." "I don't know if I can." Kale studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "Just a little, just enough." "Yeah," he said, "you do." Then he walked away, leaving her standing there with her heart in her throat and the dead fields at her back. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember what it felt like to dance. Not the performance kind, the real kind. The kind where she didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. The kind where the world moved with her. She closed her eyes and let herself remember. The forest clearing near Ronan's territory. Dawn. The air cool and damp. Her feet bare on the moss. She'd started slow, just swaying, letting her body find the rhythm first. Then the steps came. Simple at first, then more complex. Spinning, leaping, her arms carving shapes in the air. And the world had responded. The wind had picked up, warm and soft, carrying the scent of pine and rain. The ground had hummed beneath her feet. The trees had swayed in time with her movement, branches dipping and rising like they were breathing. She'd felt it then, that pull, that connection. Like the land itself was dancing with her, like she was part of something bigger. And then Ronan had found her. He hadn't said anything at first, just stood at the edge of the clearing, watching, his face unreadable. Later, he'd asked questions. "What were you doing? How long has this been happening? Who else knows?" She'd tried to explain, tried to make him understand that it wasn't something she controlled. It was just there. A gift. A curse. She didn't know. But the more she talked, the more distant he became, and the more afraid. Lyra opened her eyes. The memory tasted bitter. She sat up, pulled on her boots, and left the room. The settlement was quiet at night. A few fires still burned, casting long shadows across the dirt. Guards patrolled the perimeter, slow and methodical. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not from the madness, just loneliness. Lyra walked without thinking, just moved, let her feet carry her. She ended up at the edge of the fields, the dead ones. She stood there for a long time, staring at the blackened earth, the twisted plants, the wrongness of it all. And then, without planning it, without deciding, she started to move. Just a step, a shift of weight. Her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. Another step, a turn. The rhythm came slowly at first, hesitant, rusty, but it came. She raised her arms, let them drift, let the movement guide her. And something inside her cracked open, not loud, not violent, just open. The gift stirred. She felt it in her chest first, a warmth spreading outward, then in her feet, where they touched the ground. The earth hummed, quiet, barely there, but real. Lyra spun, faster now, the steps coming easier. The wind picked up. Just a breeze at first, then stronger. It tugged at her hair, her clothes, carried the scent of something green and alive. The ground beneath her feet shivered. She didn't stop, didn't think, just danced. And the land danced with her. She didn't notice Kyle until she stopped. He was standing at the edge of the field, arms crossed, face unreadable in the dim light. Lyra's breath came hard and fast, her heart pounded. She felt raw, exposed. "How long have you been there?" she asked. "Long enough." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "I wasn't trying to—" "I know." Kyle stepped forward, boots crunching on the dry earth. He stopped a few feet away and looked down at the ground where she'd been dancing. The soil was darker there, softer. Not much, just a little, but enough. "It's working," he said quietly. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Doesn't look like you need to." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" She didn't have an answer for that, Or maybe she did, and she just didn't want to say it out loud. Because if it was that simple, if all she had to do was dance and the land would heal, then Ronan had been right to fear her, and she'd spent so long trying to prove he was wrong. Kale seemed to sense her hesitation. He didn't push, just stood there, patient and solid, like a wall you could lean against if you needed to. "The crops aren't the only thing dying," he said after a moment. Lyra looked up. "What do you mean?" "The madness. It's getting worse, spreading faster. 3 more cases in the last 2 days." He paused. "One of them was a kid." Lyra's chest tightened. "The girl. The one I saw when I arrived." Kyle nodded. "Is she?" "Not yet, but soon." The weight of it settled over Lyra like a blanket soaked in ice water. She thought about the girl's face, the way she'd looked at Lyra, the flicker of recognition. "I don't know if I can help them," Lyra said. "Maybe not," Kyle agreed, "but you can try." "And if I fail?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now." Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple. That failure here meant more than just disappointment. It meant people would die, would suffer. But Kyle was already walking away. "Get some rest," he called back. "Tomorrow's going to be rough." Tomorrow was worse than rough. Lyra woke to the sound of screaming, not human screaming, wolf screaming, the kind that made your bones ache and your skin crawl. She bolted out of bed and ran outside. The settlement was in chaos. People rushed toward the madness ward, shouting, stumbling over each other. Someone was ringing a bell, loud, frantic, discordant. Lyra followed the crowd. When she reached the ward, the door was open. Inside, 2 guards struggled to restrain a man, tall, broad, eyes completely white. He thrashed and snarled, foam flecking his lips, claws out and slashing. Maris stood nearby, barking orders, her face pale. "Get the restraints! No, the iron ones! Move!" The man broke free. He lunged at the nearest guard, teeth bared, and Lyra saw the moment the guard realized he wasn't going to be fast enough. She didn't think. She just moved. She stepped between them. The man's claws came down. Lyra caught his wrist. The impact jarred her shoulder, sent pain shooting down her arm. But she held on. And then, without meaning to, without trying, she felt it. The pull. The gift surged through her, hot and bright and uncontrolled. The man froze. His eyes cleared, just for a second, just a heartbeat. He looked at her, really looked. "Please," he whispered. Then the madness took him again. He wrenched free, stumbling back, and collapsed against the wall, shaking. Lyra stood there, breath ragged, hands still outstretched. The room was silent. Everyone was staring at her. Maris recovered first. She stepped forward, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her aside. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. Lyra shook her head. Don't lie to me. I saw it." He stopped. For a second, he stopped. "I don't know how—" "Figure it out." Maris's grip tightened. "But because if you can do that, if you can pull them back even for a moment, then you're the only chance we have." Lyra pulled her arm free. "I'm not a healer." "Then what are you?" Lyra didn't answer, because she didn't know, and that terrified her more than anything. No. Kyle found her an hour later, sitting outside the ward with her head in her hands. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside her, silent and steady. "They want me to fix it," Lyra said finally. Her voice was hoarse. "All of it. The madness, the land, everything." "I know. I can't." "Maybe not." Lyra looked at him. "You don't believe that." Kale shrugged. "I believe you're scared. And I believe scared people usually underestimate themselves, or they get themselves killed trying to do something impossible. That too." Despite everything, Lyra almost smiled. Kale leaned back, staring up at the gray sky. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've been running from this for so long, you forgot what it feels like to stand still." Lyra's throat tightened. "I think," Kale continued, "that Ronan told you that you were dangerous, and you believed him, and you've been trying to prove him wrong ever since." He was right. Was he? "People fear what I can do." "People fear a lot of things. Doesn't make them right." Lyra looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Kale stood, dusting off his pants. "I'm not going to force you to help. That's not how this works. But if you want to try, if you want to see what happens when you stop running, I'll be there." He started to walk away. "Kyle," Lyra called. He stopped. "What if I can't control it?" Kale glanced back. "Then we figure it out together." That night, Lyra made a decision. Not a brave one, not a noble one. Just a decision. She would try. Not for the settlement. Not for Kyle. Not even for the little girl with the hollow eyes. For herself. Because Kale was right. She'd been running for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still. And she was tired of running. She went to the fields, the dead ones. She stood in the center, barefoot, the cold earth rough beneath her feet. And she danced. Slowly at first, carefully, like testing ice that might crack. But then the rhythm took over. Her body remembered. The steps came faster, the movement sharper, and the land responded. The wind rose, the ground hummed, the air tasted like rain. She felt the gift pour out of her. Not controlled, not measured, just raw and wild and free. And for the first time in months, she didn't try to stop it. She let it loose. The earth beneath her feet shifted. The dead plants shuddered. And then, impossibly, beautifully, green shoots began to push through the soil, small, fragile, but alive. Lyra didn't stop. She spun faster, arms wide, heart pounding. The shoots grew, thickened, spread. The dead field wasn't dead anymore. It was waking up. And then she felt it. A presence. Not hostile, not friendly. Just there. Watching. Waiting. She stopped mid-spin and looked toward the edge of the field. A figure stood there. Tall, thin, wrapped in shadow. Lyra's breath caught. The figure stepped forward, and she saw its eyes. White. Completely white. The madness. But it wasn't attacking, wasn't snarling or clawing. It was just standing there, looking at her, like it recognized her. Lyra took a step back. The figure tilted its head, and then it spoke. One word. Quiet. Broken. Help. Lyra's heart stopped. Because the voice wasn't a stranger's, it was the little girl's. The girl stood at the edge of the field, small and broken. Her white eyes glowing in the dark like twin moons. Lyra's breath caught in her chest. She'd seen the madness before, seen it twist people into something animal, something lost. But this was different. The girl wasn't thrashing, wasn't snarling or clawing at the air. She was just standing there, waiting. "Help," the girl said again. Her voice was thin, fractured, like glass ground to powder. Lyra took a step forward. Her legs felt unsteady, her pulse hammering in her ears. "I don't know how," she whispered. The girl tilted her head, the movement too sharp, too bird-like. "You do." Behind Lyra, footsteps pounded across the dirt. Voices shouted, close, getting closer. The settlement had heard something, seen something. Kyle appeared first, Maris right behind him. Both had weapons drawn, iron blades meant for wolves who'd lost themselves completely. "Get back," Kale ordered, his voice tight. Lyra didn't move. "She's not attacking," Lyra said. "Not yet," Maris snapped. "But she will. That's how it works." "No," Lyra said. "She's asking for help." "She's gone, Lyra. Look at her eyes." Lyra looked. The white was complete. No iris. No pupil. Just that terrible blank glow. But underneath it, buried deep, Lyra felt something else. A flicker. A thread. The girl was still in there, trapped, screaming. Lyra took another step. "Don't," Kyle warned. She ignored him. The girl watched her approach, unmoving. When Lyra was close enough to touch, she stopped. "What's your name?" Lyra asked softly. The girl's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Enna," she rasped. Lyra's throat tightened. "Enna, I'm Lyra." "I know." The girl's head tilted again. "You smell like rain." Lyra didn't know what to say to that. Enna swayed slightly, like she might fall. Lyra reached out instinctively, caught her arm. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded. Not physically, not with sound or light, but inside Lyra's head, everything went white. She felt the madness, felt it like a living thing, coiled around Enna's mind, squeezing, choking, pulling her down into something dark and endless. It wasn't a sickness. It was hunger. Ancient, vast, feeding on fear and pain and loneliness. And underneath it all, Enna's voice, small and desperate, screaming to be let out. Lyra didn't think, didn't plan. She just pulled. The gift surged through her, hot and wild, pouring into Enna like water through a cracked dam. She felt the madness recoil, felt it fight back, claws digging into Enna's mind. But Lyra held on. She poured everything she had into that connection, every ounce of fear, of rage, of stubborn refusal to let this thing win. The madness screamed, and then it broke. Lyra gasped, stumbling back. Enna collapsed. Kale caught the girl before she hit the ground, lowering her carefully. Her eyes were closed now. No glow, no white. Just a child, unconscious and pale, but breathing. Lyra dropped to her knees, shaking. Maris crouched beside Enna, fingers pressed to her throat, checking her pulse. After a long moment, she looked up at Kyle. "She's stable," Maris said quietly. Kyle turned to Lyra. "What did you do?" Lyra shook her head. Her hands were trembling so hard she had to clench them into fists. "I don't know, I just pulled. I felt the madness and I pulled it out. That's not possible." "I know!" Maris stood, brushing dirt off her knees. She looked at Lyra with something between suspicion and awe. "If you can do that, if you can pull people back from the madness, I don't know if I can do it again," Lyra cut in. "I don't even know how I did it the first time." "Then you need to figure it out," Maris said flatly. "Because we've got 11 more people in that ward. And if you can save even half of them—" "I'm not a healer," Lyra said, her voice rising. "I'm not a miracle, I'm just—" "You're what we have," Kyle said quietly. Lyra met his eyes. There was no pressure there, no demand, just truth. She looked down at Enna's small, still form. Then she nodded. Thus, word spread fast. By morning, everyone in the settlement knew. The outsider, the woman Kyle had bought, had pulled a child back from the madness. Saved her. Healed her. Lyra heard the whispers as she walked through the settlement, felt the eyes on her, the weight of expectation pressing down like a hand on her chest. Some people looked at her with hope, others with suspicion. And a few, like Joran, looked at her like she was something that needed to be put down before it became a problem. She tried to ignore it, tried to focus. Kale had set up a space in the ward for her to work. Not a demand, just an offer. A cot, a chair, a basin of water. Somewhere she could sit and think and maybe figure out how to do what she'd done to Enna again. Lyra sat on the cot and stared at her hands. They looked normal, ordinary. No glow, no marks, nothing to suggest they could reach into someone's mind and tear out madness like pulling weeds. She flexed her fingers, feeling the ache in her joints from the night before. The door opened. Maris stepped in, arms crossed. She looked tired, more tired than usual. "One of the others is getting worse," Maris said without preamble. "A man named Corvin. He's been slipping for days. If you're going to try again, it should be soon." Lyra's stomach twisted. "I don't know if it'll work." "Then we find out." Maris didn't wait for a response. She just turned and left, the door swinging shut behind her. Lyra sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she stood and followed. Corvin was a big man, broad-shouldered, thick-armed, the kind of person who looked like he could break rocks with his bare hands. But the madness had hollowed him out. His eyes were white. His skin was pale and slick with sweat. He thrashed against the leather restraints, snarling and snapping at the air. 2 guards stood nearby, hands on their weapons, ready to step in if the restraints failed. Lyra stopped just inside the room. "He won't last much longer," Maris said quietly. "The madness burns them out from the inside. Once it takes hold completely, they just stop. Heart gives out. Brain shuts down." Lyra's chest tightened. "How long does he have?" "Hours, maybe a day." Lyra stepped closer. Corvin's head snapped toward her, white eyes locking on. He went still, completely still. Then he smiled. It was the worst thing Lyra had ever seen. "You," he rasped. His voice was wrong, layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. "You're the one who pulls." Lyra froze. "The land knows you," Corvin continued. "The hunger knows you. You smell like rain, like green things, like life." Corvin, Corvin's not here anymore. The smile widened. But the hunger is. And it's so, so hungry. Maris stepped forward. That's enough. Lyra, get back. But Lyra didn't move, because something about what Corvin, or the thing inside him, had said clicked into place. The madness wasn't random. It wasn't a disease. It was connected to the land, to the hunger, to whatever was wrong with the Deadlands. Were you? Lyra asked. Corvin's smile faded. I am what happens when the balance breaks, when the land dies and no one listens. The land is dying because of you. No. The voice was sharp now, angry. The land is dying because of them, the wolves, the builders, the ones who take and never give back. I am the consequence. Lyra's pulse quickened. You're feeding on them, on the madness. I am the madness. Maris grabbed Lyra's arm. We need to leave, now. But Lyra pulled free. She stepped closer to Corvin, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his muscles strained against the restraints. If I pull you out, Lyra said quietly, what happens to him? The thing inside Corvin laughed. It was a terrible sound, hollow and echoing. You can't pull me out. I'm not in him. I'm everywhere. I'm in the soil, the air, the water. I am this place. Then I'll pull him out of you. The laughter stopped. Corvin's white eyes narrowed. You don't have that kind of power. Maybe not, Lyra said, but I'm going to try anyway. She reached out and pressed her hand to Corvin's chest. The world went white again, but this time it was worse. The madness wasn't just coiled around Corvin's mind. It was woven through him, part of him. It had roots that went deep, tendrils that wrapped around his heart, his lungs, his bones. And beyond that, beyond Corvin, Lyra felt the vastness of it, the hunger, spreading through the land like a cancer, feeding on pain and fear and death. It was older than the settlement, older than the wolves who lived here. It had been waiting, and now it was awake. Lyra pulled, the hunger pulled back. She felt it fight her, felt it dig in, felt it try to drag her down into that darkness with Corvin. But she didn't let go. She poured everything into the connection. Every memory of dancing in the forest. Every moment of peace she'd ever felt. Every drop of rain, every green shoot, every breath of wind. The gift flooded out of her, burning bright and fierce. The hunger screamed. Lyra screamed with it. And then something broke. Not just in Corvin, in the land itself. She felt it like a shockwave rippling out from where she stood, cracking through the earth, shaking the foundations of the settlement. The hunger recoiled. Corvin gasped. His eyes cleared. Lyra stumbled back, her vision blurring, her legs giving out. Maris caught her before she hit the ground. Lyra, I'm okay, Lyra rasped. She wasn't, but she said it anyway. Corvin slumped in the restraints, breathing hard. His eyes, brown now, fully brown, wide and terrified. What happened? He whispered. Maris stared at Lyra. What did you do? Lyra shook her head. I don't know, but it's not over. Nick, the settlement felt different after that. Not better. Not safer. Just different. People looked at Lyra like she was something other. Not quite human. Not quite wolf. Something in between. She saved 2 more people over the next 3 days. A woman named Sira. A young man named Tobias. Each time she felt the hunger fight back. Each time she barely won. And each time the cost was higher. Her hands shook constantly now. Her head ached. She couldn't sleep without dreaming of that vast, hungry darkness pressing down on her. Kale noticed. He found her one evening, sitting outside her room, staring at nothing. You need to rest, he said. Lyra laughed. It sounded brittle. I can't. You're going to burn yourself out. I know. Kale sat down beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. I talked to the people you saved, Kael said finally. They all said the same thing. They felt you pull them out. Felt your gift wrap around them and drag them back. Lyra didn't respond. They also said they felt the hunger fight back, said it was like 2 forces tearing them apart. I'm doing the best I can. I know, but Lyra, Kael hesitated. What if the hunger is too strong? What if you can't pull them all out? Then they die. Lyra said flatly. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is, Kael sighed. I just don't want you to destroy yourself trying to save people who might be too far gone. Lyra turned to look at him. Would you stop trying? Kael met her eyes. No. Then don't ask me to. On the 5th day, everything changed. Lyra was in the ward, preparing to try again with another patient, when Joran burst through the door. Kael, he said, breathing hard. We've got a problem. Kael looked up from where he'd been talking to Maris. What kind of problem? Ronan's here. Lyra's blood turned to ice. What? Kael's voice was sharp. Ronan Cade. Your Alpha's old Alpha. He's at the edge of the settlement with a dozen wolves. Says he's here to talk. Kael's jaw tightened. Talk about what? Joran glanced at Lyra. Her. Lyra stood slowly, her heart pounding. Kael moved to the door. Stay here. No, Lyra said. Lyra, he's here because of me. I'm not hiding. Kael looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Fine, he said. But you stay behind me. Ronan stood at the edge of the settlement, arms crossed, flanked by wolves from his pack. He looked the same as he had the day he sold her, strong, cold, arrogant. But there was something else in his eyes now, something desperate. Kael stopped a few feet away, Lyra at his side. Maris and a handful of guards spread out behind them. Ronan, Kael said evenly, didn't expect to see you here. Ronan's gaze flicked to Lyra. I'm here for what's mine. Lyra felt something cold and sharp twist in her chest. She's not yours, Kael said. I paid for her. And I paid you. Transaction's done. Ronan's expression hardened. You don't understand what she is, what she can do. I understand just fine. No, you don't. Ronan stepped forward. My territory is dying. The crops failed. The water's going bad. People are getting sick. And it started the day she left. Lyra stared at him. That's not my fault. Isn't it? Ronan's voice was harsh. You were the balance. You kept the land stable. And I was a fool to let you go. You sold me. I was scared. Ronan's voice cracked, just slightly. You were too powerful, too important. The pack loved you more than they loved me. I thought getting rid of you would fix it, but I was wrong. So now you want me back, Lyra said quietly. I need you back. No. The word hung in the air like a blade. Ronan's face twisted. You don't have a choice. Yes, Lyra said, her voice steady now. I do. Ronan looked at Kael. You gonna let her make that decision? It's not my decision to make, Kael said. Ronan's hand went to the weapon at his belt. His wolves tensed. Maris drew her blade. The air went tight. You walk away now, Kael said quietly, and this ends peacefully. I'm not leaving without her. Then you're not leaving. Ronan's wolves moved forward, and then the ground shook. Not a tremor, not a quake, a pulse. Deep, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Everyone froze. Lyra felt it in her chest, in her bones. The land was moving, responding to her. The hunger was awake, and it was angry. The earth beneath Ronan's wolves cracked. Vines burst through the soil, black, thorned, writhing like snakes. They wrapped around ankles, wrists, pulling the wolves down. Ronan stumbled back, eyes wide. What is this? He shouted. Lyra felt the power pouring out of her, wild and uncontrolled. The gift wasn't hers anymore. It was the land's, and the land was done being silent. Lyra, Kael said, his voice tight. You need to stop this. I can't, she gasped. The vines spread. The ground buckled. The settlement itself groaned. And then Lyra understood. The hunger wasn't just fighting her, it was using her. She was the bridge, the connection between the land and the wolves. And if she didn't sever it, if she didn't take control, the hunger would consume everything. Lyra closed her eyes. And she danced. Not carefully, not controlled. Raw, wild, desperate. She spun in the center of the chaos, arms wide, feet pounding the cracked earth. And the land listened. The vines stopped. The shaking slowed. The hunger pulled back. but only barely. Lyra opened her eyes. Ronan was on his knees, staring at her like she was something out of a nightmare. "Leave," she said. Her voice was different now, layered, echoing. Ronan scrambled to his feet. His wolves followed, limping and bloodied. "This isn't over," Ronan said. "Yes," Lyra said. "It is." Ronan turned and ran. Lyra stood in the center of the broken earth, shaking, bleeding from a dozen small cuts where the thorns had caught her. Kale stepped forward. "Lyra!" She collapsed, and the last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the sky, amber and endless and utterly still. Lyra woke to the smell of smoke and herbs. Her head throbbed. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. When she tried to sit up, her arms gave out and she fell back against the cot with a grunt. "Easy," a voice said. Maris appeared above her, holding a clay cup. Steam rose from it, carrying the sharp scent of something medicinal. "How long?" Lyra's voice came out rough, like she'd swallowed gravel. 2 days. Maris helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her back. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain." Lyra took the cup. The liquid inside was dark and bitter, but she drank it anyway. It burned going down, then spread warmth through her chest. "What happened after—" Lyra started. "After you collapsed?" Maris set the cup aside. "Kael carried you back here. You've been in and out ever since. Mostly out." Lyra looked down at her hands. They were wrapped in clean bandages, spotted with blood where the thorns had cut deepest. "Ronan?" "Gone." "Ran with his tail between his legs." Maris's voice was flat. "Whatever you did out there, it scared the hell out of him. Scared most of us, if I'm being honest." Lyra's stomach twisted. "I didn't mean to—" "I know." Maris pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "But that doesn't change what happened. The land responded to you. Violently. People saw it, and now they're asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that don't have good answers." Maris leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Some think you're a miracle. Others think you're a threat. Jordan's been running his mouth saying you're too dangerous to keep around." "He's probably right." "Maybe," Maris studied her. "But dangerous doesn't mean useless. And right now you're the only thing standing between this settlement and complete collapse." Lyra closed her eyes. The weight of it pressed down on her chest like a stone. "I can't control it," she said quietly. "The gift. The land. Whatever it is, it's too big, too wild. When I try to use it, it uses me back. Then you need to learn." "I don't know how." Maris stood. "Then figure it out. Because like it or not, you're the only chance we have." She left before Lyra could respond. Kale came by that evening. He brought food, bread, dried meat, something that might have been soup, and set it on the table beside her cot without a word. "You don't have to babysit me," Lyra said. "I'm not." Kale sat down in the chair Maris had vacated. "I'm checking on someone who nearly died saving my settlement." "I didn't save anything. I just made a mess." "You stopped Ronan." "I lost control." "You found it again." Lyra looked at him. His face was tired, lines etched deeper around his eyes than she remembered. "Are you always this stubborn?" "Usually more." Kale leaned back. "Eat. You need your strength." Lyra picked at the bread. It was dense and flavorless, but she forced herself to chew and swallow. "How bad is it?" she asked after a moment. "The settlement." Kale was quiet for a long time. "Bad. The fields you brought back are holding, but the madness is spreading faster. We lost another 2 yesterday. And the water, something's wrong with the well. Tastes bitter, makes people sick." Lyra's appetite vanished. She set the bread down. "The hunger," she said. Kale nodded. "That's what you called it. The thing inside the land." "It's not just inside the land, it is the land, or it's part of it. The broken part." Lyra struggled to find the words. "When I touched Corvin, when I pulled the madness out, I felt it. This vast, ancient thing. It's been here longer than the settlement, longer than the wolves." "What is it?" "I don't know, but it's hungry, and it's angry." She looked at her bandaged hands. "And I think it's connected to me now. Because I used the gift. Because I reached into it." Kael's expression darkened. Can you break the connection? I don't know, maybe, but if I do, if I cut myself off from the land, I won't be able to help anyone. The people with the madness will die. The fields will die. Everything will die. And if you don't? Lyra met his eyes. Then the hunger might consume me. And when it does, it'll be a lot worse than vines and cracked earth. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Kael spoke. What do you need? Time, space, a way to understand what I'm dealing with. You've got it, Kael stood. But Lyra, be careful. Whatever this thing is, it's already taken too much from too many people. Don't let it take you too. He left before she could tell him it might already be too late. The next morning, Lyra forced herself out of bed. Her legs were shaky, her head still throbbing, but she couldn't stay in that room any longer. She needed air, needed to see the settlement with her own eyes. Outside, the world was gray. The amber sky had faded to something duller, heavier. The air tasted like ash. People moved through the settlement like ghosts. No one spoke. No one smiled. They just shuffled from one task to the next, heads down, shoulders hunched. Lyra walked slowly, staying to the edges, trying not to draw attention. It didn't work. A woman carrying a basket of laundry stopped and stared. A man repairing a fence straightened and watched her pass. Children playing in the dirt went silent. Some looked at her with hope. Others with fear. Lyra kept walking. She found herself at the fields, the ones she'd brought back. They were still green, still growing, but the plants looked wrong. Too bright, too vivid, like they'd been painted instead of grown, and the soil around them was darker than it should be, almost black. Lyra crouched down and touched the earth. It was warm, pulsing, alive, but not in a good way. She pulled her hand back, heart racing. It's spreading. Lyra turned. Enna stood a few feet away, small and pale, her brown eyes clear but haunted. She looked better than she had in the ward, but she also looked older, like the madness had aged her from the inside out. What's spreading? Lyra asked. Enna gestured to the fields. Whatever you put in the ground when you danced, it's growing, but it's wrong. Lyra stood slowly. How do you know? I can feel it. Enna wrapped her arms around herself. Ever since you pulled me out, I can feel the land, like it's inside me, or I'm inside it. I don't know how to explain it. Lyra's chest tightened. Does it hurt? Not exactly. It's just there, all the time. Enna looked up at her. Is that what it's like for you? Lyra nodded. Yeah, that's what it's like. They stood together in silence, two people connected to something neither of them understood. The others feel it too, Enna said after a moment. The ones you saved. Corvin, Sira, Tobias. We all feel it. Have you told anyone? Enna shook her head. They already think we're broken. If we tell them we can still feel the land, that we're still connected to the hunger, they'll lock us up again. Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to say that wouldn't happen, but she couldn't, because Enna was probably right. I'll figure it out, Lyra said. I'll find a way to sever the connection, for all of us. Enna looked at her with eyes too old for her face. What if the connection is the only thing keeping us alive? Lyra didn't have an answer for that. That night, Lyra went back to the fields, alone. She stood in the center of the green, unnatural growth and closed her eyes. Then she danced. Not wild, not desperate, careful, controlled. She moved slowly, letting each step sink into the earth, feeling the rhythm of the land beneath her feet. The gift stirred, but this time she didn't let it pour out unchecked. She held it tight, kept it close, used it like a thread to pull herself deeper, down through the soil, down through the roots, down into the darkness. And there, at the bottom of everything, she felt it, the hunger. It was massive, ancient, a presence so vast she couldn't comprehend its edges. It pressed against her mind, cold and empty and endless. But underneath the hunger, she felt something else. Grief. The land was grieving for what it had been, for what it had lost. The hunger wasn't evil. It wasn't malicious. It was just broken, and it didn't know how to heal. Lyra opened her eyes. Her face was wet. She touched her cheek and her fingers came away damp. She was crying. For the land. for the hunger, for herself, because she understood now. The hunger couldn't be killed, couldn't be banished, it had to be healed. And healing meant giving it what it needed. Balance. The next morning, Lyra called a meeting. She asked Kyle to gather everyone who'd listen. The healthy, the sick, the scared, the angry. They came. Not everyone, but enough. They gathered in the center of the settlement, a loose crowd of wary faces and crossed arms. Jorn stood at the front, scowling. This better be good. Lyra ignored him. She looked at Kyle instead. He nodded. Go ahead. Lyra took a breath. I know what's wrong with the land, she said. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. It's dying, someone called out. We already know that. No, Lyra said. It's not dying. It's starving. Silence. The land needs balance, Lyra continued. It needs to give and receive. But for years, maybe decades, it's only been giving crops, giving water, giving life, and no one's been giving back. That's not true, Jorn snapped. We work the land. We tend it. You take from it, Lyra said flatly. You pull resources out and put nothing back. And eventually, the land breaks. And when it breaks, the hunger comes. The hunger, Maris said. That's what you call the madness. Lyra nodded. The madness is a symptom. The hunger is the cause. And the only way to stop it is to restore the balance. How? Kyle asked. Lyra hesitated. I have to dance. Groans and mutters spread through the crowd. We've seen you dance, Jorn said. Imokos, it makes things worse. That's because I was fighting the hunger instead of working with it. Lyra's voice was steady now. The land doesn't need me to force it into submission. It needs me to listen, to understand, to give it what it's asking for. And what's it asking for? Maris asked. Lyra looked at the faces around her, tired, broken, desperate. Everything I have, she said quietly. The crowd erupted. People shouted over each other, voices rising in panic and anger. She'll kill us all. This is insane. We should never have let her stay. Kale stepped forward, raising his hand. Enough. The crowd quieted. Kyle looked at Lyra. If you do this, if you give the land everything, what happens to you? Lyra met his eyes. I don't know, but I think I become part of it. The way the hunger is part of it. The way the people I saved are part of it. You'll lose yourself, Maris said. Maybe, or maybe I'll find something bigger. Kale's jaw tightened. There has to be another way. There isn't. The silence was heavy. Finally, a voice spoke from the back of the crowd. Let her try. Lyra turned. Corvin stood there, flanked by Sira and Tobias, the ones she'd saved. Their faces were pale but determined. If she doesn't do this, Corvin said, we're all dead anyway. At least this gives us a chance. Sira nodded. We feel the land. We know what she's talking about, and she's right. The hunger isn't the enemy. It's just broken. Tobias stepped forward. If there's even a chance this works, we have to take it. Jorn sneered. You're all insane. Maybe, Corvin said, but we're also still here, and that's more than most people in this settlement can say. Kyle looked at Lyra. When? Tonight, Lyra said. When the moon rises. The hours before nightfall felt like years. Lyra spent them alone, sitting by the edge of the settlement, staring out at the dead land beyond. She thought about Ronan, about the pack she'd left behind, about the life she'd had before all of this. It felt like someone else's life now. She thought about dancing in the forest, about the first time she'd felt the land respond to her. She'd been young, maybe 12. She hadn't understood what was happening, just that it felt right, like coming home. She wondered if that's what dying would feel like. You don't have to do this. Lyra turned. Kyle stood behind her, hands in his pockets, face carefully neutral. Yes, I do, Lyra said. No, you don't. Kale sat down beside her. You could leave, right now, walk away. Let this place collapse without you. Is that what you want? No, but it's an option. Lyra almost smiled. You're terrible at convincing people to stay. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just... Kale stopped, sighed. I'm trying to make sure you know you have a choice. I know. They sat in silence. Why did you buy me? Lyra asked suddenly. The real reason. Kael was quiet for a long time. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who'd been discarded, used up, thrown away. And I thought, if I could give you a chance to be something other than that, maybe it would matter. Did it? Kael looked at her, really looked. Yeah, it did. Lyra's throat tightened. For what it's worth, Kael said, I don't think you're dangerous. I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. Lyra didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded. They watched the sun set together. When the moon rose, Lyra walked to the center of the settlement. The crowd had gathered again, larger this time, quieter. Even Joran had come, though he stood at the back, arms crossed, face dark. Kael stood at the edge of the circle, Maris beside him. Enna and the others she'd saved clustered together, watching. Lyra stepped into the open space. The earth beneath her feet was cold. She closed her eyes, and she began to dance. Slow at first, tentative. She let her body remember, let the rhythm find her. The gift stirred. She didn't fight it, didn't hold it back. She let it flow. The wind picked up. The ground hummed. Lyra spun faster, arms wide, feet pounding the earth, and the land responded. Not with violence, not with chaos, with life. Green shoots burst through the soil, not the sickly wrong green from before. Real green. Healthy green. The air smelled like rain. The crowd gasped. Lyra didn't stop. She poured everything into the dance, every fear, every hope, every ounce of strength she had left. The hunger rose to meet her. But this time, it didn't fight. It danced with her. She felt it move through her, vast and ancient and grieving, and she didn't push it away. She welcomed it. The land beneath her feet cracked open, not violently, but gently, like a flower blooming. Water bubbled up, clear and cold. The crops in the fields straightened, their leaves turning from black to green. The madness ward went silent. Lyra felt the people she'd saved, Enna, Corvin, Sira, Tobias. Their connections to the land glowing bright and strong, no longer painful but balanced. She felt the settlement itself, the buildings, the walls, the people. She felt everything. And then she felt herself start to fade, not disappear, not die. Just expand. She was becoming part of the land, part of the balance, and she wasn't afraid. She was ready. But then a hand grabbed hers. Lyra's eyes snapped open. Kael stood in front of her, gripping her hand tight. Come back, he said. I can't. Yes, you can. Behind him, the others stepped forward. Enna, Corvin, Maris, even some of the people who doubted her. They reached out. They touched her arms, her shoulders, her back, grounding her, holding her, pulling her back from the edge. Lyra gasped. The dance slowed. The land settled. And when she finally stopped, she was still herself, changed, stronger, but still herself. The settlement was silent. Then someone started clapping, slow at first, then others joined. The sound swelled. Not everyone. Joran turned and walked away, shaking his head, but most of them stayed, and they clapped. Lyra looked at Kael. His hand was still holding hers. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled. You're welcome. The next morning, Lyra woke to sunlight, real sunlight. The amber haze had lifted. The sky was blue. She stepped outside and stared. The settlement was transformed. The fields were green. The well ran clear. People moved with purpose instead of exhaustion. Children laughed. Lyra felt tears on her face. Maris found her standing there, watching. You did it, Maris said. Lyra shook her head. We did it. Maris smiled. It was small but real. Yeah, we did. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took weeks for the settlement to truly understand what had changed. For the reality to sink in that the Deadlands, the place named for its capacity to kill, was no longer dead. The fields kept growing, not just surviving, but thriving. Plants that had struggled for years suddenly burst with fruit and grain. The soil turned dark and rich, the kind that made farmers weep with relief. The water from the well ran clear and cold, tasting like mountain springs instead of metal and ash. and the madness stopped spreading. The people in the ward began to wake, not all at once, not easily, but one by one their eyes cleared, the white faded. They came back, not whole, not unmarked, but alive. Lyra watched it all from a distance at first, still uncertain of her place. She'd changed the land, yes. Saved it, maybe. But that didn't mean people trusted her. Didn't mean they understood. She caught the looks, heard the whispers. Some called her a miracle. Others called her a witch. A few called her both. Lyra didn't care much about the labels. She'd been labeled her whole life. What mattered now was figuring out what came next. Because the hunger was still there. Quieter now. Balanced, but present. She felt it every time she walked barefoot on the earth. Every time she let herself sink into the rhythm of the land. It was part of her now, woven into her bones, her blood, her breath. And she was part of it. The connection went both ways. She just had to learn to live with it. 3 weeks after the healing, a runner arrived from the eastern border. Lyra was in the fields when it happened, helping Corvin and Sierra with the harvest. They'd become something like friends, or maybe family, people bound together by shared trauma and survival. The runner was young, breathless, eyes wide with something between excitement and fear. "Kael needs you," the boy said, panting. "At the gate, now." Lyra's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "It's Ronan. He's back." Corvin swore under his breath. Sierra's face went pale. Lyra wiped her hands on her pants and nodded. "Let's go." Ronan stood at the edge of the settlement with a dozen wolves behind him, but this time they weren't armed. No weapons. No threats. They looked broken. Ronan himself was barely recognizable. His face was gaunt, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in weeks. His clothes hung loose on a frame that had lost muscle and weight. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in a month. Kael stood across from him, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Maris was at his side, hand resting on her blade but not drawing it. Lyra approached slowly, her heart pounding. Ronan's eyes locked on her immediately. Something flickered there, shame, maybe, or desperation. "Lyra," he said. His voice was rough, cracked. She stopped a few feet away. "Ronan." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Ronan did something Lyra never thought she'd see. He dropped to his knees. The wolves behind him shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a woman Lyra recognized from the old pack, looked like she wanted to protest but stayed silent. "I was wrong," Ronan said. The words came out strangled. "About everything, about you, about what you are, what you can do." Lyra's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. "My territory is dying," Ronan continued. "The crops failed completely. The water's poisoned. People are getting sick. Children are starving." He looked up at her, eyes red-rimmed. "I came to beg." "For what?" Lyra asked quietly. "For you to come back, to save them." Ronan's voice broke. "I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did to you, but they don't deserve to die because I was a coward." Lyra felt the weight of every eye on her, the settlement watching, Kael watching, the wolves from Ronan's pack watching, waiting for her answer. She could say no. She had every right to. Ronan had sold her, discarded her, treated her like a problem to be eliminated. But the people dying in his territory, they hadn't done that. They were just caught in the consequences of his fear. Lyra looked at Kael. He gave a small nod. "Your choice." She turned back to Ronan. "I'm not coming back," she said. Ronan's face crumpled. "But," Lyra continued, "I'll help them." Ronan's head snapped up. "You will?" "Not because of you, because they don't deserve to suffer for your mistakes." Lyra's voice was steady now. "But I'm not doing it alone, and I'm not doing it your way." "Anything," Ronan said quickly. "Whatever you need." Lyra looked at the wolves behind him. They looked exhausted, desperate. Some of them she recognized, people who'd been kind to her once, before Ronan's fear infected the pack. "Your people can come here," Lyra said. "The ones who need help. We'll take them in, feed them, heal them. But they stay as refugees, not conquerors. They work. They contribute. They respect the balance." Ronan nodded frantically. "Yes, of course." "And you," Lyra said, her voice hard now, "don't get to lead them anymore." Ronan went still. What? You sold me because you were afraid of losing power, because you cared more about being alpha than being right. Lyra stepped closer. I'm not giving you the chance to do that again. Your people can stay. You can stay. But you're not in charge. Ronan looked like he'd been slapped. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Lyra, that's the deal, Lyra said flatly. Take it or leave it. The silence stretched. Finally, Ronan bowed his head. I'll take it. Kale stepped forward. Then let's get them settled. Maris, organize temporary shelters on the south side. Keep them separate until we know they're not carrying sickness. Maris nodded and started giving orders. Ronan stood slowly, looking at Lyra with something that might have been gratitude or might have been grief. Thank you, he said quietly. Lyra didn't respond. She just turned and walked away. Man. The refugees from Ronan's territory arrived over the next few days. There were more than Lyra expected. Families, elders, children with hollow eyes and swollen bellies. The settlement strained under the sudden influx. Resources were tight. Tempers flared. Arguments broke out over food distribution, sleeping arrangements, work assignments. But slowly, painfully, things settled. Lyra threw herself into the work. She helped organize the fields, taught people how to listen to the land instead of just taking from it. She danced in the mornings and evenings, keeping the balance, making sure the hunger stayed fed and calm. And she healed, not just the land, the people. The ones who'd come sick with the early stages of madness, she pulled back before they fell too far. The ones who were just weak and starving, she helped nurse back to health with food from the now abundant fields. It was exhausting. Every day she went to bed aching and bone-tired. But it was also the first time in her life she felt like she had a purpose that was entirely her own, not performing for a pack, not trying to prove she wasn't dangerous, just being what she was. And that was enough. 6 weeks after Ronan's arrival, Lyra found herself standing at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the horizon. The deadlands weren't dead anymore. Green stretched as far as she could see. Trees had started to grow at the borders. Grass covered the hills. A stream that had been dry for years now ran with water, cutting a silver path through the valley. It was beautiful. And it was hers, not in the sense of ownership, but in the sense of connection, of responsibility. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Kael approached, hands in his pockets, that familiar careful expression on his face. Thought I'd find you here, he said. Lyra smiled. I'm predictable. You're a lot of things. Predictable isn't one of them. They stood side by side, looking out at the transformed land. It's working, Kael said after a moment. The refugees are integrating. The harvest is going to be 3 times what we expected. People are starting to believe this place has a future. Good. But? Lyra glanced at him. What makes you think there's a but? Because I know you. Kael turned to face her. You've been restless for days. Something's bothering you. Lyra sighed. She should have known she couldn't hide it from him. I'm connected to the land now, she said slowly. In a way I wasn't before. I can feel it, all of it. The growth, the decay, the balance, and I can feel when something's wrong. And something's wrong? Not here. Not anymore. Lyra looked toward the horizon. But out there, beyond the borders, I can feel other places. Other lands that are broken the way this one was. Dying. Starving. Kael's expression shifted. You want to help them. I don't know if I can. I don't even know if I should. This place needs me. The people here need me. The people here are healing, Kael said, and they'll keep healing whether you're standing over them every day or not. You built something here, Lyra. You gave them the tools. Now they have to learn to use them. What if they fail? Then they fail. And they get back up and try again. Kael's voice was gentle. You can't carry everyone forever. At some point, you have to trust them to carry themselves. Lyra's throat tightened. Besides, Kael continued, if there are other places that need help, other lands dying like this one was, then maybe you're supposed to go. Maybe that's the purpose. I don't want to leave. I know. This is the first place that's ever felt like home. I know. Lyra looked at him. Really looked. At the lines around his eyes, the quiet strength in the way he stood, the patience he'd shown her from the very beginning. Come with me, she said suddenly. Cale blinked. What? If I leave to help other places. Come with me. Lyra, you said it yourself. The people here are healing. They don't need you hovering over them every day either. Lyra's voice was urgent now. But I do. I need someone who keeps me grounded, who pulls me back when I go too far, who reminds me I'm still human. Cale stared at her for a long moment, then he smiled. Yeah, okay. Yeah? Yeah. Cale shook his head, still smiling. I've spent my whole life trying to fix this one place. Maybe it's time to see what else is out there. Lyra felt something warm and bright bloom in her chest. We'd have to find someone to lead the settlement, she said. Already handled. Maris has been running things for weeks anyway. She's better at it than I ever was. And the refugees? They'll integrate or they won't. Either way, it's their choice now. Cale looked at her. When do we leave? Lyra glanced back at the settlement, at the green fields, at the people moving through their daily lives, healthy and strong, at the home she'd built from nothing. Soon, she said, but not yet. There's something I need to do first. Lyra called a gathering 3 days later. The entire settlement came. Even Joran, though he stood at the back with his usual scowl. Ronan's refugees mixed with the original settlers now, the boundaries between them blurring day by day. Lyra stood in the center of the crowd, Kyle beside her. I'm leaving, she said without preamble. The crowd erupted. Voices overlapped, some panicked, some angry, some confused. Lyra waited for them to quiet. The land here is healed, she continued once the noise died down. The balance is restored. The hunger is fed. And it will stay that way as long as you maintain it. But you're the one who maintains it, someone called out. No, Lyra said firmly. I'm the one who taught you how. But the work is yours now. The land doesn't need me anymore. It needs you, all of you. She looked at the faces in the crowd. Enna, Corvin, Sira, Tobias, Maris, even Ronan, standing quietly at the edge, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. I've left instructions with Maris, Lyra said. How to read the land, how to listen, how to dance if you need to. She smiled slightly. It's not as complicated as it looks. Just takes practice. Where will you go? Enna asked. Her voice was small but steady. Other places, Lyra said. Places that are broken the way this one was. Places that need help. Will you come back? Lyra's chest tightened. I don't know. Maybe. Someday. The crowd was silent. Then Corvin stepped forward. You saved us, all of us. We owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, Lyra said. You survived. That's enough. Corvin shook his head. It's not. But thank you for giving us the chance. One by one, others stepped forward, offered thanks, offered blessings. Some just touched her hand or her shoulder, grounding her the way they'd grounded her during the dance. Even Ronan approached. He didn't speak, just bowed his head in acknowledgement. Lyra accepted it all. The gratitude, the grief, the weight of leaving, and then she let it go. They left at dawn. Lyra and Kyle, traveling light, a pack each. Enough food for a few days, nothing else. Maris walked them to the edge of the settlement. You're sure about this? She asked. No, Lyra admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. Maris snorted. That sounds about right. She looked at Kyle. Keep her out of trouble. I'll try, Kale said. And you, Maris said to Lyra, don't do anything stupid. Lyra grinned. I'll try. Maris pulled them both into a quick, fierce hug. Then she stepped back, eyes suspiciously bright. Go on, she said gruffly, before I change my mind about letting you leave. Lyra and Kale walked. They didn't look back. The first few days were hard. Not physically. The land beyond the settlement was gentler now, touched by the ripple effect of the healing. But emotionally, Lyra felt the weight of what she'd left behind. The home she'd built. The people she'd saved. The purpose she'd found. But as they walked, something shifted. She started to feel other places, other lands calling to her through the connection she'd forged. Broken places, dying places, places that needed what she could give. And she realized Kael had been right. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. On the 5th day, they crested a hill and looked down into a valley. The land there was gray, barren, dead, but Lyra could feel it. The flicker of life underneath, the potential. There, she said, pointing. Kael looked, nodded. Then that's where we go. They descended into the valley together, and when they reached the center, Lyra stopped. She closed her eyes, and she began to dance. The rhythm came easy now, natural, like breathing. The land responded immediately. The ground hummed, the air shifted. Green shoots pushed through the gray soil. Kael watched, a small smile on his face. How long do you think it'll take? He asked. I don't know, Lyra said, spinning. A few weeks, maybe a month, and then? Then we find the next place. Kael nodded. Sounds like a plan. Lyra laughed. The sound was bright and free, carried on the wind. She danced faster, arms wide, heart open, and the land danced with her, not because she forced it, not because she controlled it, but because she understood it, and it understood her. The balance held, and for the first time in her life, Lyra Vance knew exactly who she was. Not a tool, not a threat, not something to be owned or feared or discarded, just herself. A woman who danced with the land, a woman who healed broken things, a woman who had learned that the greatest power wasn't dominance or control. It was connection. It was choice. It was the courage to stand in the center of the storm and refuse to be swept away. Lyra spun one last time, laughing, and the valley bloomed around her, green and wild and alive. The deadlands were gone. In their place, a kingdom, not built on fear or power, but on balance, on hope, on the simple, stubborn belief that broken things could be made whole again. And at the center of it all, a woman who refused to be anything less than what she was meant to be. Free, none. Weeks turned into months. Lyra and Kael moved from place to place, finding the broken lands, healing them one by one. Word spread. Stories traveled. The woman who danced with the earth, the rogue king who walked beside her. Some places welcomed them. Others feared them. But they kept going. Because there was always another valley, another dying field, another place that needed help. And Lyra had learned that running toward something was a lot better than running away. One evening, they camped on a hilltop overlooking a forest they'd just restored. The trees were thick and green now, full of birdsong and life. Kael built a fire while Lyra sat and watched the stars come out. Do you miss it? Kael asked, sitting beside her. The settlement? Sometimes, Lyra admitted, but I think I needed to leave, to prove to myself that I wasn't just tied to one place, that I could carry the gift with me wherever I went. And now? Now I know I can. Lyra leaned against him. What about you? Do you regret it? Kael was quiet for a moment. No. I spent so long trying to save one place that I forgot there was a whole world out here. This, what we're doing, it matters more than I thought it would. Lyra smiled. Good. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn. What happens when we run out of places to heal? Kael asked eventually. Lyra laughed. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But if it does, then we go home, back to the settlement, see how they're doing. And if they don't need us anymore? Lyra looked at him, her expression soft. Then we figure something else out, together. Kael smiled. Together. I like the sound of that. He reached out and took her hand. Lyra laced her fingers through his and held on. The fire crackled. The stars wheeled overhead. The forest breathed around them, alive and whole. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lyra felt completely, utterly at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because she'd finally learned what Ronan never understood. Power wasn't something to hoard or fear or control. It was something to share, to give freely, to use in service of something bigger than yourself. And that, more than any territory, any title, any amount of silver, was worth everything. Lyra closed her eyes and listened to the land. It sang to her, a quiet, steady song, and she sang back. Not with words, with presence, with gratitude, with the simple, profound knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be, dancing with the world, healing the broken places, building kingdoms out of wasteland, one step at a time. Far away, in the settlement that was no longer dead, Maris stood on the wall and looked out at the flourishing fields. Enna was beside her, taller now, stronger. "Do you think she'll come back?" Enna asked. Maris considered. "Maybe. Someday. I hope she does." "Me too, kid. Me too." They stood in silence, watching the sun set over a land that had learned to live again. Because one woman had refused to be less than she was, had refused to let fear win, had chosen love over power, balance over control, connection over isolation, and in doing so, had changed everything. The Deadlands were gone, but the kingdom, the real kingdom, built on hope and healing and the wild, stubborn courage of a woman who danced, that kingdom would last forever.